entrepreneurship?
So it's really great. I mean, dealing drugs was supply, demand, customer service, collections, all the stuff that goes along with it.
Right.
That was where I think that I got my start, which is weird to say, but I started to understand. I couldn't verbalize it the way that I can verbalize it today, but I started to understand that my freedom was going to be based in not primarily, but in large part to do with my ability to create revenue for myself. I dropped out of school. I got kicked out, was really the truth.
Right.
Went out on my own. The only skill sets that I had were given to me by an adopted father who adopted me at 6, went to prison for attempted murder of me and my mom when I was 17.
Wow.
And that was my beginning, right? And that's what I talk about my story, but it's really all of our story. We learn a set of skills and more importantly, a way of viewing the world that's programmed into us by parents who don't know any better, in a city or a town that doesn't know any better. And we sort of adopt those beliefs. And as we adopt those beliefs, then we start to execute, because a belief ultimately becomes activity and actions. And then that becomes the results that we get. So, that was the beginning part of it. But then, I went through and my first son was born, and I did my last drug deal the week that he was born because I got stabbed in the chest. I've got a scar all the way across. It should have killed me.
Wow.
All the way across my chest. But it was interesting, what happened, because I would get beat up so bad when I was a kid that I'd get locked in my room. And I had 2 things in there that my grandma always made sure I had a Bible. And I really didn't have a lot of, it wasn't attached to like a religion. It was Bible, right? It was a series of stories to me as a kid that I would read over and over and over again. And one of the things that stuck, as soon as that knife hit my chest, one of the Bible verses that immediately popped into my head was that the sins of the father are born onto the children. And I was like, man, where did that come from? And it was in that moment, I'm like, well, if I survive this, I'm done. Like, because I just had my first kid. He was a boy. And I'm like, this is not going to be whatever. I don't know what to do. This is the second part of our lives that we have to be really conscious of, is that we're doing what our community, our friends, our family teaches us. And then one day we wake up and go, what if I thought a different way? What if I did something different? What do I do? And then we go, well, I don't know what that next step is, right? I don't know what that next step is, which is why your show is so important to people, to say, here's an option. You don't have to take anything I say tonight, but it's another viewpoint, right? Of how to approach things. And so I was lucky enough to have, people like you show up in my life to say, Jason, you've got talent, you've got these things, you're not applying it in the right way. What if you did this? And I went and got a legitimate job. I was peeling logs with my then brother-in-law, hand peeling them. For log houses. Went from that was like $6 an hour, went to $8 an hour, digging out a sump for my father-in-law at the time at a mine, which was basically 3 stories underground. And then decided I need to learn a trade. And so the trade that I picked up was being a carpet layer. Okay. And then that led into, becoming a salesperson, warehouse guy, and then salesperson, and then figuring out that I could do this on my own in a business sense. So I started that, went bankrupt, lost everything. Lost everything. Another one. I went bankrupt 3 times in a row, Timothy, and learned here's why that's important. It's important that you try new things and that you surround yourself with people that maybe are where you want to be or have gone through what you've been through. That's how you shortcut things. You don't listen to these gurus online that are telling you, that I read a book somewhere and all of a sudden I know everything, because they're slick marketers. You have to find people that have paid the price and felt the pain that you're either going through, trying to get through, or want to avoid, right? And so I ended up losing that third business and kind of lost my mind, if I'm being honest. Like, I didn't know, I didn't have a high school diploma. I didn't have a college diploma. My family's all jacked up, no credit, no nothing. It's just, I had a criminal background. All of this stuff kind of stacked against me. And I went through a divorce. My wife at the time got pregnant with another man's baby. If you could stack up everything that could go wrong. And by the way, I still count that boy as my son, and me and my ex are very, very close still to this day. But we both had to go through it. It was something that we had to go through. So, but at the time, my life was ending, and I started to think, I don't know how to do anything. Like, I don't have any connections. I don't know how to really do anything except for sell. And I was having panic attacks at the time, so I couldn't sit across from somebody to have a conversation about a sale without thinking that I was having a heart attack. Or anybody that's had panic attacks, you understand the stupid stuff that you believe is going on. And so that just kept that trajectory. That's what I really want to focus in on our conversation tonight, is that we are always in some sort of a trajectory. Okay. And my trajectory was headed down, and I didn't have any interventionist. I didn't have anybody that stepped in. And I went all the way to the bottom. I ended up homeless, begging for food. And, to cut a really long, I became suicidal, and just slowly over time lost all of the stuff that I had acquired. And the only thing that I kept was a gun. And that's what I was going to shoot myself with. And that trajectory, it has predictive ends: prison, death, drug addiction, divorce. All of the things that trajectory had predictable stop points. And so I got driven all the way to the bottom, and went to a homeless shelter. I'll never forget this day. I went to a homeless shelter, and I had two choices. It was one that was put on in Southern California by Pastor Rick Warren's church. And it was a pastor by the name of Pastor Timothy. And I went in there, and there was rotten bananas and that cauliflower that had the black mold on it. That was the last two things on the shelf, right? And I was, by the way, very, very grateful for it. But Pastor Timmy started talking to me about my life. And he said, you strike me as somebody who shouldn't be where you're at. What's your story? And I was like, look, at the end of the day, I am where I am. I'm a loser. I had started to believe all of these things because my life was, and my decisions had driven me there. At that point, I was blaming everybody else, though. Trust me. I was blaming society. I was blaming my adopted father. I was blaming, everybody that I could blame, because that was easy. Taking responsibility was difficult. And it wasn't a pain that I was ready to face or to accept in my own life. And so, he handed me two books that day, and he handed me one of the Bible, which I tossed back at him because I was a little pissed at God. I'm like, which God doesn't really care, but I was a little pissed. I'm like, you know what? My wife cheats on me, gets pregnant with another baby. I lose my businesses. I basically lost my mind. Yeah, this Jesus thing ain't for me. Right. And which, we'll get to that story, how that ended in a minute. So I tossed that back at him. I got no use for that. So he handed me Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. Right. And I started reading that book, and I'll give you it's a really thick book, but when I got to the end of it, there was this statement that was in the book that stuck with me. And it was this: it's in your moments of decision where your destiny is shaped. It's in your moments of decision where your destiny is shaped. What that meant to me was an epiphany that started to change the trajectory of my life by gaining a new perspective. And that new perspective was, oh, damn, my wife cheated on me because of my behavior, right? My business has failed because of my decisions. I'm where I'm at not because of my adopted father, but because of it. And it started to just be like, oh, that's true. I made really bad decisions in my marriage, in my business, in my friendships, and how I was taking care of my body. I was making really bad decisions that were delivering predictable waypoints on the trajectory down to hell. Right?
Wow.
So I turned that and I started to understand. I want everybody to understand there's nobody that's selling you anything. There's no such thing as an easy pill. And there's no such thing as 3 steps to success in 6 months or 6 figures or 10 figures or whatever the newest title of the gurus are, right? It's incremental progress on a destiny that you decide for that right? It's incremental progress.
Hold on right there.
Okay.
You let that marinate right there. Say that one more time.
It's incremental progress on a destiny that you predetermine.
Okay, this in that moment. Okay, so segue or branch off. So my group Acquiring Vision, and my question was, how important is vision to success? I mean, that's what I heard. Like, talk to from, like you just said that. So that destination, how did you find your destination? How did it become clear to you to the point where you did not quit?
Yeah, it didn't. Okay. It didn't. And to answer your question, vision is everything. Vision is everything. So acquire it, remember it, right? There's different ways, but I believe that we've all been put on this earth for a unique purpose for us by God Almighty up above, right? That's my belief. And based on that understanding, what you do is, again, in the trajectory, because you don't go from here to here,
right,
instantaneously. It doesn't happen for anybody.
Right.
So what you do is you set what you think is a huge vision for yourself. For me, it was having a car. I'm like, I want to have a car. And then I'm like, I'd like to, because I went from that to, I got a job, selling cars. I went from that. So first thing is I did a drug deal on the beach. It was my last one. I ended up going to Tony Robbins' event. Okay. And while I was at that event, it just made a lot of sense. If you've ever been to a Tony Robbins live event, you should. If you never have been, it's unbelievable. But I had this awakening to say even further, to say not only is my destiny a series of decisions, but the meaning that I gave things. Instead, a lot of us are saying, you know what? I got to get over what happened to me as a child. No, you don't. What you have to do is accept it for the building block that it actually is. Right. You have to not, it's not about forgiveness. Forgiveness is one step. It's freeing yourself from the bondage of a memory that no longer exists. That's forgiveness. But Man's Search for Meaning, it's a book that was written by Viktor Frankl. And it was a man who got ripped out of his life because he was Jewish. He got thrown into concentration camps. He watched people burned to death. He watched them shot in the head. He watched all these things. And he came out with this statement that I remember from his book: I am more free than my captors. Right? You listen to you read about Paul in the Bible. He was most free when he was imprisoned.
Right. And that's weird.
It's very, very strange. But we are all walking around in some self-imposed cell of beliefs that are hindering us. Wherever I am right now, I'm here because of how I believe, how the things that I believe that turn into actions that give me results. My results that I have right now are because of my own decisions, period. End of sentence. Yes, there may be oppression there. Yes, there may be unfairness there. Yes, there may. But if one person who looks like me has succeeded, then there is a roadmap to be duplicated, right? Because success leaves clue, just like failure does. It depends on which trajectory you're following. So anyway, so going back to that point, I went to Tony's event. I left that. I went and got a job selling cars. And my first outcome was I wanted to go to work for Tony Robbins. That was my objective. That was I'm going to go work for that man because he just changed my life. But there was a gap in between that. And I went to start selling cars. Got a car, put a roof back over my head, went and got my first nice suit. Actually went on a trip to one of Tony's events, met the wife of his first employee, and she called Tony and on the phone and said, "Hey, I've got this young man here that wants to come to work for you. What position do you have open?" And I knew he had two. He had inside sales, which wasn't my thing, and he had this other thing called FSR, which was a speaker for his organization. And when she told me that, and neither one of those I wanted, I didn't want to be a speaker. That scared the hell out of me. And she said, and so she takes the phone. I'm going to cuss one time on your show. This is your house, but I'm going to cuss one time. But so she's on the phone with Tony at this event, and she says, "Okay, he's got a position open. It's FSR." And I'm like waving my hands. No, not that. And she literally looks at me in the eyes and she goes, "Jason, don't be a pussy."
Wow.
And I was like, nobody calls me that.
Yeah. I know.
Nobody calls me that. Her name is Lauren LaHave, right? Lauren LaHave changed my life.
Shout out to Laura. Woo,
Yep,
woo.
Lauren LaHave. She changed my life. You guys should follow her. She's amazing. So anyway, I went into that position, and the trajectory of my life just kept going that direction. And it was small. Again, to me at the time, it was large. But it was just like, okay, cool. I thought that I was going to go to work for him, and I wanted to be Tony Robbins. There's a lot of mini Tonys out there in the world, just repeating his words, right?
Yeah.
I figured out I didn't want to do that. I had failed miserably 3 times in business, and I did one thing right. I kept notes of my failures, of the decisions, how I felt when I was going through it. So when I was on the road with Tony, I'm like, you know what? I'm being exposed to some of the greatest business minds in the world. I'm being invited to speak at their place. And I would start telling them, I'm like, look, whenever this is over, I will wash your dishes. I'll take your trash out. I'll do whatever it is. But can you spend 15 to 20 minutes with me going through some of these questions in my old notebooks? And so after 3 years of doing that, Timothy, I ended up with 3 new sets of notebooks on exactly how to combat the failure and the bad decisions that I had made. So that built a system that I went then out and started in doing turnarounds after I left Tony, because I knew that my place was not going to be being Tony Robbins, but what I did know was business. And I knew the failure, and I knew the pain that goes along with failing at that, and how I'm gonna pause. I want everybody to hear this. There's a few pillars, like if you have a four-legged table and freedom is the tabletop. One of those legs is called independent access to capital.
Independent access to capital. All right. So 4-legged table.
Yep.
One of those legs.
One of those legs is called independent access to capital. Now, what that means is in communist or socialist or dictatorial type countries, the people are doled out the money that the government sees fit for you to have. That is not independent access to capital. That is indentured slavery. Okay? And so you come to America, independent access to capital means you can start with whatever you have, nothing. You can start from nothing. The Cubans down in Miami, which I have some great friends down there that start restaurants, and they come over on a boat and they have nothing, right? And they start a little restaurant and they start building up capital, and then they buy a house, and then they buy a building, and then on and on and on and on. Independent access to capital is something that we have to understand is up to us. That is a pillar of our freedom, right? Right to speech, right to protect yourself. Independent access to capital, right? And equal protection under the law. Those are the 4 tenets that I believe holds up that the tabletop of freedom. Now, as I started to understand this, going back to my experience, I started doing these turnarounds for these companies. And then I started saying, well, I'm making these guys a ton of money. I'm making good money, but I'm making these guys a ton of money. So I'm going to stack my money. I'm going to start buying businesses again. And started doing that one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, and built myself a nice living, right? Because ultimately, and I want everybody to hear this too, because, I wear this 1776 because that was this country's decision to say we want to be a self-determinative state, right? And then we had the scourge of slavery, which we did our best to straighten that out. We did, the country's not perfect, but ultimately there's more choice here. There's more opportunity for us than anywhere else in the world. I've been all over Africa. I've been all over the Middle East. I've been all over Asia. I've been all over this world. And I can tell you that this country is still the best place on the face of the planet to be an individual, to own your sovereignty, right? Sovereignty is different than freedom.
Right,
It's God-given. Freedom can be taken away. Sovereignty cannot.
Which kind of explains about how people are able to be free in prison. When you recognize us ourselves as sovereign beings, that regardless of what kind of shackles you put on my body, my mind is still
who I am.
Yeah.
You can't take who I am. And it doesn't matter. You can damage my body. You can put me in, you can take away my freedom. You can throw me in a box somewhere, but I own this, right? And that's one of our biggest tools. That was given to us by God. Sovereignty cannot be taken away. So as I've gotten into, so when I sold in February of 2019, I really did get close to saying, you know what, I'm going to check out. I'm going to go retire. I'm going to bounce. And it was a conversation with my mom, who's never given me business advice in my life, ever. And we're talking, and I'm like, Mom, I'm struggling with, because I was already doing rescues of kids, underage kids in the sex trade. I was heavily involved in domestic violence and fighting against it. Became the CEO of Feed a Billion, which we feed people all over the world. And I was already heavily involved in that stuff. But I said, Mom, I think I'm good. Like, this was two years ago. And I'm going to be 50 this year. And I thought, you know what, maybe it's time. And she said, Jason, I want you to know why I named you Jason, because it means warrior and healer. And it's not your time to retire.
Wow.
You have to serve. And very, very, very Christian-based woman, been praying for me my whole life. I was finally baptized last year in November by the man who led and leads the CERT Ministries that does the rescues of the kids.
Amen.
And we call it the Slave Free Project, because that's what we're doing. We're ending the scourge of modern day slavery. So ultimately, I was like, okay, if I'm going to come back in the game, it's no longer about building Jason Sisneros' wealth, right? It is in true service. It is in true service of taking my knowledge and being able to feed it back into the communities that are looking and need the wisdom. Because the further we get, we say there's freedom knowledge is the thing that sets people free. And there's been little chunks, regardless of how much access we think we have through the internet. If anything, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on, doesn't matter to me. But if 2020 showed us anything, it shows you that the book of knowledge is still owned by an elite few. Because what you see on social media is meant to manipulate you to follow their thought process. Right?
Wow.
So, and this independent access to capital is like a book of knowledge. It's like a chapter in the book of knowledge that they've ripped out, because they want us chasing rich. They wanted me to say, and I did. I chased this, man. I chased it with all my heart, to say that the bigger house, the boat, the things, that's going to make me worthy of people's love. It's going to show that I'm a worthy individual. And it was the furthest thing from the truth. I get goosebumps every time I talk about this, is that when I lost everything, Timothy, everybody that had attached to me because of my success at the time disappeared. I remember one day, I'll never forget this day. I had put together enough coins to put in a phone thing to make 9 phone calls to people that I knew to say, can you Western Union me $10? I haven't eaten in 3 days, right? Can you Western Union it? No. These are people that I help buy homes for. These are people that are driving around in cars that I bought for them. These are people that had made a lot of money in some instances, and at least some money in most, that said that they were my friends while I was having parties in my hot tub and taking them out to the lake and doing all that kind of stuff. Gone. And I said, at the end of this day, man, if it's one person, I'm only going to be with people who I love and that love me for who I am. I'm never going to spend another day breathing trying to impress people who don't love me for who I am. And a lot of people online, you can see, I don't pump up. I don't spend the money that influencers do. I don't try to buy followers. You either love me or hate me. But if you hate me because of who I am. And if you love me because of who I am. The same person that you're talking to here is the same person who will have a tequila with you at the bar, or sit with you in church, or go with you on a rescue to grab a kid. It's the same person, right? And so that chapter that's been ripped out of the book of knowledge is, you be rich and you'll be worthy, right? Wear the right pair of tennis shoes, right? Live in the right house, be in the right zip code, right? Drive the right car, and you're going to be accepted and loved by all those around you. It is the biggest line of bull in modern history, throughout history, really, but especially now. Wealth is created by independent access to capital, and by learning and reading and educating and failing and being someone of service, right? I believe that after all of the things that I've been through, God put me on earth to become the best me that I can be. Now that's where the world stops. The world stops and says, be the best me that I can be so I can get mine, right? God says, no, for the purpose of serving my children, serving the people that need you to show up. Now, the only reason I'm in the game, the only reason I have a consulting company to this day is so that because I know I could write checks until I was dead broke, and I'm not going to make a difference in the sea of suffering that exists in this world. But if I gather all of the business owners are some of the most giving, most loving, most sacrificial people on the face of the planet. Not all of them, because you end up with unethical business like Amazon and like Apple and like these different companies that one man's worth $90 billion. I don't hold anybody's success against them, but $90 billion? What do you need $90 billion for? I mean, how many inner city schools could we rebuild? How much food could we distribute around the world? How many even privately funded strike forces could we send in to get children? How many aftercare programs could we build for women? How many people could we feed? Like, with $90 billion, that is disgusting. It's disgusting. Meanwhile, our independent access to capital being crushed through COVID, being taken away, small to mid-sized companies affected the worst, while people like Walmart and people like Amazon and people like these other companies, they thrived. Why? Because they have lobbyists that pay off Washington, D.C. And I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. It makes no difference to me. They're criminals if they're making these kind of deals and crushing small to mid-sized companies.
Wow. Let me stop you right, man. Dude.
You didn't know what you was getting into, did you?
I'm like, I mean, you were talking my language. You speaking my heart. I mean, I'm resonating. My girl is on here watching, and she's like, you know. So, oh my gosh, just so powerful, so powerful. So here's the thing that one of the things just help us. First, this 10K a month number. Where does that come from, and why are we chasing it? Those who've never done it in their business, 10K a month. Why that bar is set? Why are we like, I gotta make 10K? And if you don't get 10K, you feel like your business is a failure. You feel like your life is a failure. You know, you want to quit. Just all these things are attacking you and coming at you because you can't hit that 10K mark. And you said a lot, even with that whole, the rich want you to be rich and chase riches and not purpose.
The wealthy, they don't want to lose their wealth. If somebody like me, Jason Sisnero and Timothy Moore learn that, now they have to compete with us because they're playing the same game as us. But they're not, because they own politicians, they own, blah, 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 blah. So to your point though, 10K a month is an arbitrary number that somebody sets in their own head. Now think of it like there's two, it's an A and a B answer. We all have a thermometer of earnings. Okay. The bottom of that means that I'm not going to be able to pay my rent and feed my family. The top end of that is above what we believe we are worth. Okay. And so it goes up and down. This is the cycle. I make $3,000 because I got down here. I got hustling, right? I got busy because, oh damn, I got to pay rent. And then we get up to about 9 or 10K and we're like, so we start to slack off on our behavior that created the ability to get there, right? Because that thermometer is set by some arbitrary number of what you believe you're worth. It's nothing else. It's built on what you need and what you believe you're worth. Those two things. And it hovers between that number. Could be $3,000 a month, could be $1,000 a month. Whatever that number is for you, it's arbitrary. Now, let's take 10K a month and let's say that my outcome is to be free, because this was the outcome of what I wanted to make sure I got through to everybody. Business owners' biggest mistake is that they start a company without acquiring the vision of what it's there for. And a business is not there to make you pretty for other people. It's not to make you better than other people. It's not to satisfy some deep desire to earn daddy's love or mama's love. It's not there for you to continually be broke at a higher revenue stream.
Right.
It's there to create freedom. It is a machine that is supposed to create cash that builds your wealth so that your freedom is because your choices are now your own. Wow. Okay. Now that's the biggest mistake. So if you do nothing from everything that we just talked about, except for sit down and say, okay, freedom. What kind of freedom, Jason? Because this is a word that everybody throws around. What does freedom mean? Freedom means there's 3 types that I've identified. One is lifestyle. So my house is paid for, my car is paid for. I got enough money to get me through to about 120 years old. Okay. That's set aside. That's one level of freedom. The other freedom is for you, the freedom to be able to go start other businesses. Biggest mistake for business owners, don't start another business until you have your one business that's cranking and systemized and you can leave it and it's getting better without you. Do not leave it for going starting side hustles and all this other kind of crap. That is the biggest joke I've ever heard in my entire life. So the other type of freedom is the type of money that you make that you can give back to something that you're passionate about, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. I have 4 or 5 big ones: trafficking, domestic violence, feeding people, inner city, and suicide. Those are my big 5 that I work on constantly. And there's a program that we put on with Lauren Michaels Harris every year we didn't do it last year for obvious reasons, but Power of We, where we go into inner cities We bring in great business speakers and we talk to the kids. We give them a big red carpet. We boost their value of who they are, like give them vision, and then they'll come up with business ideas. And some of the people in the audience will invest and finance some of these kids' ideas. So anyway, that being said, is that when you determine what your freedom looks like, when you look at somebody like a Warren Buffett, he lives in the same house that he did back in the 60s. He drives the same truck that he did back in the 60s, right? The same exact stuff, because he didn't care. What he did was he built wealth, which gives him choices. It gives him influence. It gives him the ability to have a lifestyle, start other businesses, buy other businesses, obviously through Berkshire Hathaway, and then also to be able to give back philanthropically to the things that he wants to give to. That's choice. So when you're starting a small business, you own a small business to a mid-sized company, just stop what you're doing and redefine what your freedom is, because there is a price tag, a very specific price tag. If you want to stack, when I say $1 million, sometimes that seems like a lot of money to people. It's not, right? If you took all of the wasteful spending that you did and you threw that into account that was going to spin off a 10% interest rate for yourself, and you did that for 5-10 years, let's say, that money in an investment thing will spin off $100,000. That's what, a couple $1,000 every week, $3,000 every week that now you don't have to go earn. It's just there and it's building principle, right? These are the principles of investment. Your business is the greatest opportunity for you to create wealth for you and your family. Wealth, not riches. If you do it understanding what your freedom costs and that's your outcome. Not to impress your neighbors, not to impress your family, not to feed some desperate need to be accepted in your childhood trauma, but to become free. Your business can do that. And there are business principles with the only thing that I built. I still have Anton J Global is the name of my company. That's my consulting company. Now we built a digital program called it's called Growth, Master Your Business G-Spot. I even named it something a little bit naughty, because if that can offend you, you're not going to want to listen to my principles of business. So beat it now and we'll see you later. But we built that for one reason, to give people that couldn't afford to hire the consulting company everything that I have. I don't have retreats. I don't have all the next level coaching we're not coaches. We are specific consultants that can fix anything small to mid-size. Doesn't matter what it is, right? That's my team of people. I don't do much of that anymore. And then I did 24 hours of my greatest content to put back in the chapter of how to build wealth through a thing called small to mid-sized companies, right? That made it affordable. So anyway,
wow.
So that's the outcome. Freedom.
It is funny you said that, because just the other day, that was my meditation in the morning. It's like I got up and I was like, okay, what would really make me feel free? And freedom is if you're not free to do what you love every day for the rest of your life, then you're not free. I mean, that's really the money, the cars. And I'm like, because like you said, I've wasted probably $1 million.
I promise you have.
I know I have. I mean, I'm so sure of it. And so I'm like, okay. And the more money I get, the happier I have not got. I mean, I haven't gotten happier. And it's like, I need more money. Well, every paycheck, you're getting more money. Nothing shifted with the more money. The thing that has to shift is in our mind. So, oh my God. So let me ask you this. Okay. So starting out, the mindset that you had, your environment, being abused, gang member, your whole perception of I'm a horrible person, the whole mindset of nobody loves me, the whole, just everything that you were living with. What point did you realize you had something to build a business on? And let me kind of say it like this. I remember, so I'm in IT. I was struggling. I mean, just all this stuff, had money, but I felt horrible. And I kept hearing, oh, everybody's got a talent. Everybody's got a talent, use your talent. And I kept asking God, like, well, what's my talent? And then it hit me. It was like, you can write. And I was like, oh, but that's dumb. And then it was like, okay, but that's what I gave you. So I was like, fine. And so I started Vision Writers. What was it for you that I'm thinking it was sales because that's what you started with, but kind of talk about that journey to jumping in and just owning your identity and just running with it.
Yeah. Here's what I'll tell you. God made me too stupid to believe that I could fail. I'll just tell you. I mean, I believe fourth grade teacher changed my life in this aspect. Any talent that you need to develop, we have a vision for our lives. We have some inborn talents inside of us. You for writing, me for speaking, those types of things. But any skill set can be learned. And the problem is that our success is on the other side of skill sets that we haven't learned, that we don't want to learn because they're difficult. Businesses fail at the rate of 95%. If you started today, 95% of those companies will be out of business in 5 years. Why? Not enough capital because they're busy spending it, right? Or they don't have it. Number two is management. Management and money both need you have to have a necessary understanding of finance. And there's lots of ways to learn finance. But I didn't do that in my 3 bankruptcies. I got obsessed with, I love numbers, numbers love me, because I'm like, I'm not a numbers guy. Anybody can be a numbers guy. Anybody can be a numbers gal. It doesn't really, it's getting that, the whatever you love to do. I don't even care. Like my biggest successes were companies that clean toilets. My biggest successes were companies that clean cars. My best money that I've ever made in my life, still for a company that I own today, is porta potties.
Wow.
It's doing stuff that other people don't think is glamorous. I don't care, because every time we cleaned a toilet, I made money. When you drive through a city, guess what those buildings are filled with? Toilets. Right? And guess who's those cars? They all need to be cleaned by somebody.
Right.
That's a pride issue. There is so much money in the service industry right now because everybody wants to be fancy this and fancy that and fancy this and all this other kind of stuff. If you got into that and you serve and you fall in love with the outcome of your client, and then you build a company, you fall in love with the outcomes of your employees, then you start to earn this thing called residual income and ridiculous rates of return on the small investment that you make to start a small company. But you got to fall in love with those things. So to answer your question, more specifically, that I didn't know, for me, it was getting into, a trade because I didn't graduate from high school. On the other side of that, it was I accidentally made a sale when the owner of the store was out one day. And I just started talking about, I was waiting there for a check and started talking to this lady, sold her a whole entire household full of carpet, tile, and some other stuff, some linoleum. And it was like a $50,000 sale. And the owner came back in and screamed at me. He says, you ever do that again, blah, 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 blah. He was a jerk. He goes, but if you want to do this, you're going to start in my warehouse. And so it happened again, where it happened to be the friend of the first lady that I'd sold that big house that came in and asked for me. And it pissed him off, right? It pissed him off. He's like, go out there and see what you can do. Sold another whole house, right? And then, it got to that point where he was upset because I was doing better for his company than he was.
Wow.
That's an ego-based decision. I could have made him rich. And instead, he pissed me off. And I went a town away and went to work for a guy that ended up selling me my first business. And I crushed him, put him out of business. So that was did I know I was good at sales? No, but my fourth grade teacher taught me one thing: fall in love with words, Jason. She knew that I was being abused. And she said the way that you can exit that situation that you're in is by writing. Write stories and transport yourself away from where you're at. And I fell in love with the dictionary. I fell in love with words, which when we get angry sometimes, it's because we can't enunciate or translate to the outside world how we're feeling or an idea that we have, because we haven't learned the words to be able to make it from here out our mouth. So I tell everybody, you're going to do better at whatever it is that you do if you fall in love with language. And start getting away. Last thing I'll leave for business owners, stop focusing on technology. Technology for the big companies is a way for them not to have to talk to a customer. If you want to be wealthy, get as close to your customer as you can. Talk to them as often as you can. Don't push them away with technology, because that's lazy. So anyway. We could go days, man. I think you said 30 minutes. That was what, an hour ago?
Dude. J-Rock, J-Dog, J-Bro, man, Bald Avenger. Man, this is hot. I mean, this is a lot. I mean, this is really good. This is really good. People need this. People need to hear your heart. It's just so many things. So another question. On your road to making your first million, what were some of the keys that you had to implement? Like the milestone, your money milestone that shifted you to be able to get to the next level. And then even some of the thoughts to get to that. Like there's a point, like you talking about the trajectory. Like you recognize I am on this trajectory. Like, sometimes even now you feel like, man, I'm close. I'm almost there. Your spirit is like something's about to break. You don't know what, and things are still falling apart. But you're like, man, you probably had that experience. Like, what was happening when you were riding that wave, and then all of a sudden it broke? Lead us on there.
So, the beginning part of your business, you just have to outwork everybody. You got to stay up later. You got to make more phone calls. You've got to learn. You've got to be educating yourself in your downtime. You've got to sacrifice time away from your family. There's this thing called balance out there that throws everybody off, because there's no such thing as balance. Sometimes your wife or your husband needs more attention. Sometimes your kids need more attention. And sometimes you got to buckle down and get your business off the ground. Trajectory and momentum together, right? Together are magic. So when you ask that question, what was it? I was outworking everybody. I still, to this day, when I decide that I'm going to do a project, it's very, very difficult to outwork me, because I know that that's a fundamental piece of the rocket, right? They say 90% of the gas and the fuel and the energy is spent just getting it off the platform. Right. And then it gets into momentum and orbit. But I would say just be ready by setting your objective first. Okay. I knew that I wanted to make a lot of money back then, right? You're asking me about back then. And I thought that the more money that I made, the more worthy I was of love. It's a fire. You know what I mean? It drove me to do the right things, which was work my tail off. I had a bed next to my desk that my son would sleep in some nights, and I would fall asleep on my desk, wake up, load out the cruise, go out and sell, do the thing, get my son off to school. There's an element of sacrifice that people aren't willing to put in until the dream is big enough. And at that point in time, I never ever wanted to be in a situation where, when my mom and I were growing up, we would stand in government lines for cheese, for that powdered milk. And I saw the look of shame on my mom's face when we were doing it, and I saw her every time how embarrassed she was to pull out food stamps. And, I watched her work 3 jobs and still not be able to make it, right? Because my adopted father was a loser. And a I watched her get beat down and get up and with a broken wrist and go to work the next day. I watched all of this happen, and I got made fun of in school because I was always the poor kid. One pair of pants, one shirt, had to wear that the entire year, right? And so for me, I'm ashamed to say that it was ego-based, to say I'm not going to be like that. My kids aren't going to be raised like that. Right? We would have to walk out on these dirt roads sometimes to go find asparagus. My mom made it an adventure, but I now know that it was because we wouldn't have eaten that day.
Right.
Right? There was that level of desperation and embarrassment and shame that drove me to not want to be that. And that was my initial driver, right? And then over time, I realized other things. So what I'm telling or suggesting to your audience is skip all that and figure out what freedom looks like for you, and reverse engineer where you are today and make that your non-negotiable. Every penny you make, set it aside. Every penny you make, stay where you're at. Drive the car, even if it's crappy, nobody cares, right? Even if your apartment's small, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Put aside the amount of money that you need to be able to live for 1 year. That's a little bit of freedom, right? Then have a year's worth of money for your business to run on. That's a little bit more freedom, right? Then put away a little bit more. Start putting some into an interest-bearing account, into some investment fund. And that gets you more and more freedom, instead of trying to impress a world who doesn't, like I said, I was trying to impress people who didn't like me anyway. They're talking behind me, behind my back anyway. Didn't matter. This was about me and my freedom. And I would say for everybody here, that's going to be the best shortcut that you can ever get to. Determine what your freedom looks like, put the numbers to it, and then get to work.
Man, Jace, wow. Amazing. This, man, 57 minutes and 25 seconds and counting. Wow. So good. I'm not going to keep holding. I could talk all night, but I definitely know that those who are going to be coming back watching this are going to be really excited and really glad that you came on the platform to share. It was so needed. I needed it. So just glad to be able to connect with you. I'm definitely going to be going back, looking at this, taking notes and pulling on it, and just being able to, one more thing. I keep saying that. All right. So how do you position yourself? How did you find a way to get around people who are more successful than you? What were some of the keys to that? It's positioning, it's proximity. How are you able to do that?
So I got two answers for that. One is that when I got around old money, right? When I got around, because when I started making the kind of money that puts you in those positions and in those crowds, I don't like a lot of those people. Okay. So I don't fit, because that stuff means something to them, and I walk in the room and I'm like, I could care less how many Ferraris you got. I could care less your fancy thing. Who are you, right? Who are you? And so there's another group of people that are humble, that have built the lifestyle that you want. And let me tell you a secret. Most of them are not on social media. Right? When you walk around your own neighborhood, you go somewhere where a company store has been around for 20 years. You go talk to that man, you go talk to that woman, and you ask them, what's up? How did you get here? What are some of those things that I need to learn from you? Right? There's some very, very few people that are out there that are influencers that have really walked that path. Jay Abraham, my 24 hours of content on business is the best in the world, not just because I'm saying that from an ego standpoint, because it is exactly what I did to get where I'm at. And the success there. You got Keith Cunningham, and he was the real rich dad in the Rich Dad Poor Dad books. owned real companies, and now is in a stage of his life where he's teaching. There's Tony Robbins for the mindset is the greatest that I've ever seen. So there's some real people out there. Most of them aren't on social media though. I would much rather, go to a laundromat that's been around for 20 years and go talk to that guy, go take him to, or that woman, and go take him to lunch and say, how did you do this? What do you suggest I do? You know the neighborhood. What could I do? What product could I come up with? And you'll be amazed at what talent is in your own town and they're willing to share. That's kind of what I love about Clubhouse. You have 90% of the people that are full of crap. I almost went on. They're full of crap. And then you have 10% that are on there that have actually done something and you should listen to. And you can tell the difference in their tonality. One group is selling stuff all the time. The other is offering. They're giving without expectation or anything in return. Now, that's also if you're in that position that you're like, well, Jason, I'm not there yet. I need to sell. Serve first. Give first. Go first. And add value, and the money will be a byproduct of your service to other people.
Man, amen. Mic drop. All right, Jason, man, I'm gonna let you go. I'm not gonna do it. I know, but you definitely got to come back. And especially, you got to come back when my privileges to Facebook are restored.
You got it. I mean, hopefully there's something else that pops up besides Facebook because, again, think about that. Just that sentence that you just said. Yeah. For me to have a privilege to be on a free speech platform. You know what I mean? Like, It's not, those things don't make sense. They have grown too big for their britches.
Right. Yeah. Facts.
So there will be other social media things that pop up, or the free marketplace. It's not free market when Facebook is tied in with the government. It's not free market anymore. It's not free market when Google is. It's not free market when Amazon is. It's not free market. Now it's unethical business tied together with unethical politicians. But free speech will win out as long as we all stand up and we stand together and we don't let the division of color or gender or sexual preference or the religions that separate. There's so much division out there that keeps us fighting with each other. You and I shouldn't be having this conversation. Just because you're black and I'm white, right? We shouldn't be having the conversation. We shouldn't be getting along.
Right.
Because I don't understand you and you don't understand me. I get your heart, right? That was Martin Luther King's greatest call was for us to have this kind of conversation where color doesn't matter to either one of us, right? And that's division. That's how you keep politicians in control. That's how you keep us at each other's throat. It's about service to each other, to our brothers and our sisters. That's it. So anyway, don't get me on that stuff.
No. Look, I will listen and I will keep listening and I will keep listening. Wow, this is so good. So good.
Anytime for you though. Anytime you want me back, I'm here.
Oh man, don't say that.
Be like, Danielle tomorrow.
Man, I'm like, look, Jason, and I definitely want to. There's another platform that I have. It's called The Male Perspective. It's creating a safe place for men to have the uncomfortable conversation in a public forum so that we can heal. And I definitely know that you could add a lot of value to that. So definitely want you to be on there and share and talk from the heart. So good to have you here, brother. Appreciate you. Anytime. Glad you kept true to your word, because I know when we were in Clubhouse, you were like, oh yeah, anybody wants to interview, connect with me. And I'm thinking in my head, whatever. So I shot you up and here you are. So I appreciate you being humble enough and being a servant that you are.
Anytime, anywhere, because, at one point in time, people believed in me, right? They gave me chances. And I'm just a servant. Like, I love serving. I love doing what I can. And for me to add value to you, who is here giving of your time and putting together a show and doing all of the things that you're doing to support you, your community, the people that are close to you, to lift them up. I'm with you every day, all day, man. That's who I want to be with.
Man, let's do it, brother. Let's build. I'm telling you. I mean, I got vision right now. My mind is gone already about what we could do and what, just the extensions of your heart. The roots being planted here in Omaha, Nebraska, where Warren Buffett is. Look, let's go.
Are you in Omaha?
I'm in Omaha.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Great story. It was timely and and geographically correct.
all that. Because when you start talking about Warren, I was like, does he know I'm in Omaha? So
no clue. That's awesome.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. All right. So we're gonna just cut it off with there. Don't leave. Stick around just for a couple seconds. We'll just kind of do a little wrap up after the show is over with. But everyone, thank you for watching. This is Timothy Moore and Jason Sisnero. And we are out. Peace.
Choir Master